This recording will give you a little information on how to read the middle of year DIBELs report. The first page includes a table of contents from which you can see there is a lot of information in this report. First off will be which schools participate in the K-1 Institute. There's also some explanatory notes. There is a data sheet included that indicates how many test scores were available at the time the data was pulled. Schools except Castleview and Washington that were below 80% participation will not have summary data in this report. The remainder of the table of contents shows you that there are two-year comparisons, data for kindergarten, all students and AELs, first grade and all students and AELs, then a beginning of year to middle of year comparison for the grades, and a last year to this year comparison for both of the grades. If you look at the district-wide results from 2012 school year to 2013 school year, this is 11-12 to 12-13, you will see that we are not yet reaching the levels of performance in early literacy that will allow our students to read at grade level and eventually become college and career ready. Middle of year at kindergarten this year we're at 58%, and in first grade we're at 53%. Realistically, we want to be as close to 100% as possible for our students for two reasons. One, reading is more difficult as you become older, so we want as many students as possible to be reading at these levels. You may notice that there is good growth from beginning of the year to middle of the year in both kindergarten and in first grade. In first grade there is a little bit of a dip from 2012 to 2013. This can partly be attributed to the fact that not all students district-wide were included in our data last year, as we had multiple data systems chosen by the schools, and this fall our instruction staff has been holding some sessions on how to administer the DIBELs test correctly, which may explain some of the decrease. The number of students page shows in green the schools whose data were included in the report because they had at least 80% of students participating. The two exceptions are Castleview and Washington, who are included and may not have 80% because some of their students are in a dual language immersion program for Spanish language testing and take the Spanish version of DIBELs on a different time schedule than the English version. The 2012 to 2013 graph explains the same information that was in the number table earlier. The year-to-year graph for academic English learners shows that this school year, shown in dark blue, we are doing slightly better with our academic English learners. However, we're still not anywhere near the minimum 80 desired 100% level with these students. Instructional group graphs show the four instruction groups. Those in blue are the students who are benefiting from our core instructional program. Our desired mark is there is at least 80 and ideally 100%. If we were to compare this to the typical RTI pyramid, we would see a minimum of 80% for the blue area, those students benefiting from core instruction, and a minimum of 5% in the red area, students who need intensive support. These are the goals we're striving for. Those same goals apply to our work with academic English learners. A desired amount of a minimum of 80% in the blue, benefiting from our core instruction, and a minimum of 5% in the red, those students needing intensive support. Similarly, the guidelines apply to our first grade students. Once again, a desired minimum of 80% in the blue area, benefiting from our core instruction, and a minimum of 5% in the intensive area, those students needing intensive support. We round out that information with our academic English learners in first grade, desiring a minimum of 80% of students benefiting from our core instruction and a minimum of 5%, a maximum of 5% of students needing intensive support. Core instruction means everyday instruction in the classroom, standard routines that the teacher is using, and standard learning tasks that the teacher is using to help students master their early literacy skills. The four graphs showing beginning of year to middle of year demonstrate our progress with this year's cohort of students. The last group of pages show us how we are doing comparing this year's students to last year's students. So this is an 11-12 school year comparison to a 12-13 comparison. The earlier sheets were this same group of students from their beginning of the year to middle of the year. These particular year-to-year sheets are last year's students compared to this year's students. The final sheet in the report shows the difference between our three cohorts of students whose teachers have received intensive professional development for multisensory strategies compared to students whose teachers have not received that professional development. As you can see, all of the cohorts whose teachers got the professional development started at a lower performance than those who did not get the professional development, and that was by design. Teachers who had students who were struggling the most have been offered this training in multisensory techniques in order to see what strategies we can implement to help these students perform at levels similar to their colleagues who are not struggling. As you can see, the K1 Institute cohort started off lower and in some instances are now in performing in a similar range to those students who were not struggling at most. This is due to the efforts of our principals and teachers. Thank you very much.